The meeting will come to order. Good evening and welcome to the Olentangy Board of Education regular meeting. Tonight is January 25th and we are meeting in the Berlin room at the Olentangy Administrative Offices. Mrs. Hatfield, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Bartz.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mrs. Fiesel.
Here.
And Mrs. Patrick.
Here.
Thank you.
This evening we have we would like to welcome the Boy Scout Troop 428, led by Scoutmaster Tom Kipfer. They will lead us in the color guard and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand.
Please stand.
Please join the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was much more fun than normal. This evening we have a special presentation by the Wyandotte Run Elementary Choir, and they are led by Mrs. Lori Kipfer. Welcome.
Would you please stand for the Star Spangled Banner? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. One of our parents told us that it's School Board Appreciation Month, so our students have made cards and we have a gift bag for each board member.
Oh my God. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. What's your name?
Thank you very much.
Oh, me too? Thank you.
No, Mrs. Fiesel.
Oh, sorry, Mr.
Mr.
Rave
that's
took
all
Mrs.
right.
Thank you very
Fiesel's
much.
bag.
Pressure on the superintendent.
We'll still give you another snow day, don't worry.
When is
Thank
Superintendent's Appreciation Month?
Yes.
Every day, every single day.
So it's
Oh,
Board
and
Appreciation.
chocolate. Oh. Yay.
Oh, look at the cards.
Thank you very much. Look at, they all fit them.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. They can stay or they can go. Oh, thank you card. That's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you guys should come back at every board meeting. That was fantastic.
They were at the Braves basketball game, and they
Yeah, I
did
saw
an
that.
excellent job. I was so excited they were there.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mrs. Kipfer.
Thank you. We'll have to bring a gift for your treasurer superintendent.
We'll share. We'll share. It's okay, we have another. Okay, our next presentation, we'd like to welcome Jeff Chambers from the Ohio School Board Association to recognize Orange High School journalism students Jacob Fulton and Maddie Niles, who will not be joining us this evening, and their advisor, Carrie Phillips. Welcome.
Hi.
As you know, one of the more popular activities at the Capitol Conference is our Student Achievement Fair. The fair is a mini trade show of 100 booths with districts demonstrating and showing a lot of the activities and programs that they've developed that have improved student achievement in their district. The fair is basically a showcase for conference attendees to come and take ideas back to their district. The display from Olentangy Local was part of the very first fair back in 1999. And you guys have had displays there throughout the years since then. Every year in the post-conference issue of the journal, we feature an article on the Student Achievement Fair. We recently started working with area journalism programs to have students from those schools come and cover the Student Achievement Fair and write an article for our journal. Working with Devin and with Carrie here, we had 2 students, Jacob Fulton and Maddie Niles, who covered this year's Student Achievement Fair. They went around to all 100 booths, took pictures, talked with everyone there, and came up with an article that was published in the conference issue of the journal. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here tonight, and to thank Jacob and Carrie and Devin for helping us and allowing us to showcase some of the talent that we have in all areas of school. So, with that, Jacob.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Make a mess of everything
In that
here.
picture or what?
I have a set
Are you gonna get in that
of
picture?
issues for
Do I-
you
am I supposed
sign,
to?
Give to your friends.
For president?
Share some of the.
There you go.
Let Dad get a picture too.
Yeah, come on over. You can come over closer, Dad. Wherever you want to be. Thanks again. Outstanding.
Congratulations.
Thank you
Yes,
for
thank
coming
you.
and
Thank you.
congratulations. Do we have the agenda? Or the agenda?
You have to prove
Okay.
it, yeah.
Wait, I lost my spot. I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Hatfield, please call the roll.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion is moved, but no, I said that wrong. The motion's
okay.
passed. We also have, one moment.
I think it's just you.
Oh, it's the board president's
Yeah, it's you.
report? I
It's
wasn't
your-
really
it's your
wanting
moment.
to do that. Okay, well, again, I'd like to thank my fellow board members for entrusting me in this role. And I think you will rest assured knowing I will be attending the OSBA board leadership class on February 3rd on parliamentary procedures. I am looking forward to it, and I have set a goal for myself to channel my growth mindset and be the most improved board member. That's what I'm going for. But unfortunately, that is the same day as our One Community Conference. That was my favorite event that I attended last year. And I would strongly encourage you to tell anyone to attend. It was informative, and I was completely blown away with the talent of our students that spoke. There was one student that even his speech, he rapped it. I think he has a future in broadcast journalism. But I highly encourage that you attend. It's a fantastic event. We are all students, and this conference is a wonderful opportunity to learn and gain fresh perspective. That concludes my president's report, and Mr. Rafe, would you please present the superintendent's report?
Thank you, and it's always great to have a good audience. Thank you, Mr. Kipfer and the Scouts, for leading us in the pledge. That was excellent, and of course, Mrs. Kipfer, as usual, did a fabulous job, so we're very blessed to have her participation here tonight. So, as Mrs. Kipfer indicated, it is Board Member Recognition Appreciation Month. As Krista is prone to do, she likes to prepare comments and make sure I don't just rattle things off. And I tell her with regards to this, I'd rather just speak from my heart. On behalf of the community, and our staff, and more importantly, the over 20,000 students we have in our district. Thank you for all that you do. I don't think people fully appreciate the amount of time and energy you put into preparing yourselves to run these meetings, the policy work, setting the tone, the direction, the vision for our district. Now, in my third year as superintendent, I tell people all the time, we're very fortunate. We have a cohesive board. You have great collaborative dialogue. You don't always agree about everything, but at the end of the day, you come to decisions that move the district forward. And we're honored. We're honored to have you serving our community. So thank you for all that you do.
You're welcome.
How about a little round of applause? Thank you. So on to our good things. We have two students that have been recognized here in the community. Addie Kearns is a sixth grader at Shanahan Middle School. She was recognized as Sunny 95's Rising Star Award, recognizing outstanding Central Ohio youth who are serving in their community and making a difference. Addie was nominated for the award by the president of the Down Syndrome Association of Central Ohio for her fundraising effort. She raised nearly $3,000 for the organization last year during its annual Buddy Walk. Addie helped organize Team Alex, named after her brother, a student at Shanahan Middle School with Down syndrome, and served as the team captain. So that was a great honor for Addie. She is a tireless worker on behalf of the Down Syndrome Association. We also had a student who was the Channel 10 TV Athlete of the Week. Emma Humane is a 12th grade student at Liberty High School. Last week she scored 27 points in a game, making 7 3-point shots, which was a school record, gotten recognized by Channel 10. And I remember Emma well. She nailed a bunch of 3-pointers last year when my daughter played. Great player, though. She does a great job. So congratulations to Emma. So with this next good thing, I'm going to do a little tag team here with Mr. Spinner. Wanted to give you an update on Berlin High School. And so far we have hired 40 teachers internally, and we have 4 teachers on tonight's agenda who are external hires. Mr. Spinner can talk a little bit more about that when he comes up. Come on, you want to come up? You coming up with me? I'm a tag team. And there are 8 coaching recommendations on the agenda. So we have, anybody here? Yes. Is that our just here? All right, you can highlight them. Go ahead.
President Patrick, Vice President O'Brien, members of the board, Superintendent Rafe, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you this evening. We're very excited about all the great things that are happening at Berlin High School. This past Monday, my administrative team and I were able to put together a gathering, and you can see the picture there, in this very room, aptly named the Berlin Room. It only made sense. We refer to our new staff as the Berlin Bear family, because that's what it is. The Olentangy local schools are a family, so we're going to go ahead and take that on and that family atmosphere. It purposely was a light agenda. I wanted to make sure that our staff members were able to come together. It was a meet and greet. We ate. There were no laptops allowed whatsoever. It was all about getting to know each other as people. Most importantly, we talked about expectations, opportunities, and officially building that foundation of a safe, positive, welcoming, and engaging academic culture at Berlin High School. However, I did not feel as it was enough to use just words to express the fact that they were building that foundation. So now I'm going to give Mr. Betts the secret signal. And really, let's do it this way, Mr. Betts.
You're gonna throw them to us? Because I'm out.
Well, neither am I.
I don't know, he's been working
It's
out.
smoke and mirrors.
Very nice.
So truly what I wanted to do was give a visual to our staff
Thank you very much.
that they were building the foundation of Berlin High School. And I'll be honest with you, the fence around Berlin's higher than it looks, and I would recommend, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. the brick that you're receiving is to thank you, building off of what Mr. Rafe said, is to thank you for all the work that you're doing on a daily basis for Olentangy local schools, also for building this foundation of Berlin High School. On that brick, you'll notice that there's a commemorative official coin, the Berlin coin, limited edition, and I mean that. I only could afford 150 of those. So thank you so much for all that you've done. I would hope that every time that you look at that brick, it's a reminder of the foundation that you've made, not only for the district, but for the future students of Berlin High School. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One staff member who's here, right? Ian, mentioned it.
Mr. Reeves is here, absolutely. I would love to do that. Thank you, Mr. Rafe. Mr. Reeves, come on up, please.
Bet he wasn't expecting that.
Call you out.
Mr. Reeves comes from Fredericktown High School.
Freddie.
Oh, the Freddies.
Yeah, absolutely. And he, hopefully, upon board approval, will
Wait a minute, wait.
No pressure, no pressure.
will be the new band director.
Yay.
Terrestrial.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so, and one of our other external hires that is, was supposed to, he must have got caught up coming down from Cleveland, is Mr. Norrie, who's going to be an English teacher and also the head football coach. They're hosting a meeting. Now, Mrs. Fiesel, he did play at Boston College in 1993 and caught 2 touchdown
I
passes.
was at that game.
And they beat Notre Dame.
I was
So
at that
I
game.
need to ask you to put aside your personal bias and consider approving him.
My husband was at the game prior where they beat Florida State, and I went to the next game
So-
at 93, and we lost. And
Don't pull him out.
it was
and-
a
and-
heartbreaker. I still remember that game.
Are you going to have to recuse yourself?
I know.
You might have to abstain. Yes, yes. So the next thing on my superintendent's report that I'm going to tag team with Mrs. Davis here is an update on our branding project, because that's on the agenda for approval.
Great stuff. Thanks, John. You could just
Good
pass it down.
evening, everyone.
Evening.
Good evening.
Emily, hi. Emily is passing out something I'll talk about here in a second. I appreciate Mr. Rafe allowing us to have this opportunity to talk about the branding project. It's on your agenda this evening to approve the firm that we've selected. But I thought I'd start back at the beginning with some questions that I think people in the community, people in general often ask about why does the district even need to do branding? What does it actually mean? And can't we just have an art student design a new logo? Our art students are fabulous here at Olentangy. Of course, one of them could design a logo. But the reality is, hold on here. The reality is that branding is actually far more than a new logo. And while we will have a new logo at the conclusion of our process, we will do several key components to get to that point, plus so many other things. So we will be researching our existing practices and do an entire brand audit of all the pieces and parts that we have that say who we are as a school district. We will look at positioning and messaging to create a new brand identity program. Who are we? What do we stand for? What are we about here? And how do we communicate that to all of our stakeholders, all of our audiences? We'll develop brand standards, and they will be implemented through trademarking and licensing, as well as teaching and training all of our staff, all of our boosters, all of our coaches, everyone who's involved in the organization, how to use these things to convey who we are and what we're all about. So the benefits of this, again, is not just a new logo, but we'll be able to elevate Olentangy Local Schools' image. Now, we're already an amazing school district, of course, and everybody in our community knows that, but it's important to really fine-tune our message about who we are and what we do and what we stand for. It will help enhance our stakeholder pride. So our stakeholders are our families, they're our taxpayers, they're the business owners in the school district, they're our students, pretty much multiple groups of people and organizations and throughout the district.
We will be able to clarify who we are, as I've said. We'll be able to leverage our assets. We'll be able to promote better who we are with a revised brand. It'll be an opportunity to improve awareness and education of all those stakeholders, and then hopefully increase funding and donations for the school district as we move forward with licensing and trademarking. What I'm missing here is also improve with our teachers and administrators, recruitment of teachers and administrators through more professional branding, through a clear message about who we are, and finally, happy and satisfied stakeholders. So, when we began this project, at the beginning of December, we put out a request for proposals. They were due at the beginning of January. We received 15 proposals from Canada to Boston, Chicago, and numerous places in Central Ohio, including our very own community. We had a 10-person committee who reviewed the proposals using a rubric, which is what Emily passed out to you. The rubric follows exactly what I asked for in the proposals. So tell me how you're going to research. What kind of focus groups are you going to create to learn more about what Olentangy does? How will you do the brand audit? How will you come back to us with brand standards? How will we work together to come to a final conclusion? From that scoring on that rubric, we had about 5 finalists that bubbled to the top, where we were able to go back to the committee and all agree on one final vendor for the most part. I guess it was pretty much unanimous. And it is Rickaball Graphics. Rickaball Graphics has 30-plus years of experience, and predominantly in the educational institutional branding area. They've had numerous clients in that field over the past 3 years, and some of the clients you can see there on the screen that they've had. They actually developed the Ohio State University Athletics brand in the 90s, which we're all quite familiar with, and continue to be a consultant for the athletic department on that brand. They are district residents, have been since 1992. Although their office is in Gahanna, they live right here in our community and had 2 children graduate from Olentangy High School. So they had been super involved with their children through their K through 12 education, and still remain here and are strong supporters of Olentangy local schools. So definitely have a clear understanding of who we are and what we need and how we can better define our image. And then they came in under budget and under our timeline that we proposed, which was finishing by July 1st, 2018. So with that in your agenda, the approval for Rickaball Graphics is for an expenditure of up to $50,000 because that is what I had budgeted for. Their budget has come in lower than that, but we're still going to go ahead and approve it to that amount, just to be sure we've covered all bases and to be very transparent about what we're doing with this project. So with that, and whoops, back to that. Any questions that I can answer? Yes, Dave?
Got a couple of questions and a comment, unless you want to save it for when we actually take an action.
No, I think we should talk about it now.
Go ahead and ask now. Reading the document that you emailed to us, could you elaborate, and I don't need a long elaboration, but give me a summary of what the focus groups is about?
The focus groups for the branding will be perhaps students would be one group, parents would be another, community leaders would be another, administration, board members, teachers. There'll be multiple focus groups that will talk to Rickaball Graphics about what they know about Olentangy, what their impressions are about who we are, what's important here to us, what we value, and they will be able to pull all that together from all those different groups to find the common threads and what rises to the top to take it to the next level for the branding.
And then, as I understand the document, just to confirm, their fee structure, because they had different options, does not include, which I know would have a legal component, shoot, I just lost the word. Trademarking, thank you. Does not include the trademarking process in their proposals and work study?
Correct. And I have a copy here of that.
I've got it. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure I didn't miss something.
No, you did not.
That's a separate,
That would be a separate process, which they would help set us up to be ready for.
okay. And then my comment is, I'm very impressed that in their logo, they use a wood pencil. And that would have done it for me right there.
There you go.
Thank you. So I'm going to follow up on Dave on the licensing, to the extent of getting us set up on the licensing and the trademark protected. Obviously, Ohio State is very protective of its brand. The purpose here is, I believe, from what I understand in all this, is not to put companies out of business, but it's to put entities, either family-owned businesses, local businesses, the Walmarts of the world, on notice. If you're going to use it, you have to follow the same process that Ohio State does. Will it cost you a few more dollars to pass along to your consumer? Yes, depending upon the licensing fee. But I think the important thing is, for me, is the understanding that being a public entity does not mean it's a public free-for-all in the use of those things for this business side of what Olentangy does. So I appreciate the fact that we're going to do that, because the horses have been running free for many years, which is fine, and I want to emphasize free. And again, it's not to do anything, but this is a way where we can protect the brand, use it to protect it and raise money through that protection. So I appreciate that part. So I'm glad that's in there. That was what I focused on the bid itself.
Yes.
And if anything I said is wrong, tell me now.
No, you are correct, and absolutely, I am very happy. You emphasize a free-for-all. I call it the Wild West. We're going to...
Pick your name for it.
Yeah, we're going to rein that in.
Now, are you going to be the district's brand manager on this project? So who's going to own the project inside the district as it matures?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am. I'm obviously collaborating with multiple areas of...
Right, I just wanted to make sure, if
Yes.
it's not you, who is it, so we know? I mean,
it is me.
You could be just she who put out the bid.
Yes.
but- Okay, thank you.
My only observation would be, don't change for change's sake. Many companies have gone through branding exercises,
You guys know.
changed their logo, only to change it back.
Yeah, because life comes at you fast.
Understand this
effort to try to help us.
there's existing equity in the logos that are there. You need
Yeah,
to
in the brand, right.
Make sure you just don't toss
Yeah,
that out
value.
and say,
Absolutely.
we're automatically come back with something different. It may be an incremental change, it may be a wholesale change.
And I
Let's
think...
not give up on what we have either.
I agree, and I think that's where the research part is so important, to listen to what the different focus groups of our organization, our community say about what Olentangy Local School District is. So I think that will be very important throughout as well.
Okay.
I have a question about the timing. So you said that they would wrap up their portion of this by July 1st?
That was my deadline, my timeline in the RFP. However, Rickabaugh Graphics feels that they will complete this project in 4 months' time because of the amount of experience they have with other educational institutions, K-12 and higher education. They feel very confident that that will be the case.
And so will we roll things out gradually, or will Olentangy just go through a massive transition?
That's a great question. We will roll it out when we're done, so I envision that being in the summer as one big splash, but obviously business cards, letterhead, nameplates, all of the pieces and parts that have our Olentangy look and feel on them right now, we're not going to replace everything wholesale all at once. We will replace things as they need to be replaced with the newly branded items as we go. So we've been very careful over the past 1.5 to 2 years in what we order and the quantities, so that we don't have a stockpile of incorrect letterhead or incorrect business cards. So we should be able to move things along, but obviously not for the sake of just putting out a new logo or tagline.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, and that change for change's sake, I'm certainly not about that, and I appreciate the comment about the logo. The silhouette of the two children waiting at the bus stop is really meaningful to me, being kind of a historian of the district, because I know Art Counts, who created that logo for a levy campaign in the early 90s, and the two kids in the pictures are Liberty grads, and the little one is Elizabeth Sullivan. So, I mean, I know who those kids are, and it means a lot to me, so I've been really resistant on that topic. So, moving on, we do have Scott Leopold from Cooperative Strategies here, who's going to give us an update on our demographics moving forward and kind of show a building-by-building analysis of where our enrollment looks like it's projecting. A couple other agenda items. We have a typical list of declaring transportation impractical. Obviously, the approval of the district branding project contract. We have a land parcel sale to the Delaware County Commissioners. They're doing some road widening and a roundabout at Lewis Center Road and North Road, as you're aware, so the county needs some of our frontage of the Olentangy property. So they have offered us a fair market value for that land parcel sale. So that's on the agenda. A couple important dates coming up. Obviously, Mrs. Patrick already mentioned our One Community Conference on February 3rd. Begins at 8:30 a.m. It is a Saturday. And then our next board business session is February 8th back here at the administrative offices. So before I close, Mr. Norrie has joined us, who is on the board agenda for approval as an English teacher at Berlin High School and as our head football coach. So I do know they have a Meet the Parent meeting. Mr. Norrie, Mrs. Fiesel is a huge Notre Dame fan, so we have already
I was at the 93 game.
got her. She may abstain. She may recuse herself from the vote. Don't take.
I was looking for my Lou Holtz picture on my phone. So.
You'll talk more about it later.
Yes, I can't believe that Mr. Spinner entertained that idea, but we got to stick together. No, I respect Boston College.
Okay, stop. Just stop now. Don't.
Moving on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rafe. Mrs. Hatfield, the treasurer's report.
Yes, good evening, everybody. We have two treasurer action items on the agenda tonight, the November and December financial reports. Our general fund revenue is trending slightly higher than anticipated, and our real estate taxes due to one-time Board of Revision tax settlements. We also are just slightly over where we expected to be on our state aid, but we predict that that's going to level out and be where we had it proposed in the October forecast by the end of the fiscal cycle. This year, the state budget has been rolled out sooner than anticipated, so they're releasing those payments sooner in the fiscal year than they have in the past. And so it'll level out and even out where we had previously predicted for the year. It's just a matter of timing that it's a little bit over budgeted at this, or over our anticipation at this point. Expenditures are on target for this point of the fiscal year. We do have some over budgets or under budgets in particular categories, but again, that's a timing issue. And we feel that we're progressing towards our target overall in those areas. Are there any questions regarding the financial statements? Okay. The other information that I would like to share is that our 2017 audit has been publicly released. We have, again, a clean audit, and we are also eligible to receive the Auditor of State's Award with distinction again. We have a long history of that in our department, so I'm proud to announce that we will be eligible for that. And a representative from Auditor Yost's office will be with us on the 8th to present that distinguished award. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're excited to have another year of good reports and meeting our expectations and reporting requirements. So that's a great effort on the part of our staff. I'm very appreciative of all the work that they do to reach out and work with everybody across the district to make sure that we continue to meet those standards. With that, are there any questions about the audit reports that you had? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our discussion item. Please welcome.
Public participation.
Oh, I apologize. Mrs. Hatfield, do we have any public participation for general comments?
No, I do not have any requests for participation.
Now we will move on to our discussion item. Please welcome Scott Leopold from Cooperative Strategies on our update on demographics.
I guess I need to update the logos on all the maps, right, Krista? Okay, it's great to be here. This is always nice. It's like coming home.
Yes.
Just kind of an overview of this, this presentation tonight. We were asked to kind of take a closer look at the enrollment projections, school by school, based on the redistricting changes that are being implemented next year. And so I'm going to be going over kind of the methodology that we did, comparing this to the Future Think projections that you guys already have, and then just go into a little bit more detail about the actual projections themselves. So the data that we used individual student data dating back to 2005, 2006, and so this is the actual individual geocoded student data that we get. We have every student's address and where they resided by year. And so we know where the kids were in 2005. We can roll that up into planning units or subdivisions or whatever we need to look at. All the projections that we produced are based on the boundaries for next year, and we'll show historical enrollment for those boundaries going back to 2005, 2006. So it'll be interesting to see how many kids lived in like the Cheshire elementary zone as it's drawn today, and next year, 15 years ago, or 13 years ago. We also used individual zip code birth data, and so we'll show the comparison between the Future Think and this report. We used actual zip codes that pertain to the areas that we're projecting instead of a combination of zip codes to project everything district-wide. So they're a little different than what you're used to seeing. Things that we did not factor into the projection, we don't factor in any kind of grandfathering or any transfers between schools, and so everything that you're going to see is the students that are projected to reside in those areas in the future. We also didn't account for any program placement. So you may see some schools that are maybe populated higher than you think they are. It's because it's based on those kids that actually live there, when we may have kids that are transferring out for pre-K or SLCs or some other program. I've got this little table to kind of just do a quick comparison of methodology. I just want to be very clear. This is not a improvement or building upon the Future Think report. This is just apples and oranges. This is just different. As far as geographic resolution goes, the Future Think data is based on a district-wide projection. It uses district-wide data as an input, and that's its output. What you're going to see tonight is based on attendance boundary. We then roll that up district-wide. The source data, Future Think uses the official enrollment counts by school by grade, and as I alluded to before, we use the individual student data, and we can roll that into any geography that we want. As far as source birth data, the Future Think report uses selected zip codes combined together for the traditional smoothing model for birth, and then we use, again, those individual zip codes that would apply to that particular area that we're projecting. Housing data, the Future Think report uses K through 1 student yield data to project kindergarten for the housing model that they do. If you recall, there's 2 different models in that Future Think report, and the housing model uses that, the historical and projected student yields for kindergarten and first grade to project that in that model. We look at the historical and projected housing data to influence our projections, and so I'll show you in a couple slides, how we really look at that, and that's what really makes this study different. The intended use of the deliverable for Future Think, it's high-level macro district-wide facility planning. How many schools are we going to need, in what grades, those types of things. What I'm going to show you tonight, this is micro-level boundary planning, and so we're showing, what are the impacts on specific neighborhoods, what do specific neighborhoods have on certain attendance boundaries. Overall complexity of these, I would say that the Future Think is moderately complex, and you'll see tonight this is very complex and takes a lot more time to put together.
So,
Sure.
so I think as a board, we should coalesce around a methodology. Because right now we have 2 firms and 3 different methodologies.
Sure.
Predict enrollment, and I think, frankly, it creates confusion.
I don't think that you need to do the level of detail that we're providing tonight every single year.
Okay.
And doing a district-wide projection is kind of checking the oil, and it's less work to produce, and it can be done every year and with less effort than you're seeing with what you're going to see tonight. again, it's apples and oranges. I can't really say that one is better than the other. They're just different.
Kevin, I would add that Dave and I in the Facilities Committee, we've been talking about this very thing, is how do we make it more streamlined, less confusing overall. So we are looking at all the entities to try to figure out what the best delivery model is. You know, using the Ralph All predictability model, super spreadsheet. Well, you know, I think when Mr. Fetty got involved this last year and started looking at building capacity, that was a way for us to streamline through some of this.
Yeah.
So I think that eventually what we're going to come out is with a recommendation for the board to look at as to how we narrow that a little
Great.
bit. So to your point, we're already talking about that. So.
Good.
Okay.
But I do want to say that it's two different subjects, too.
Yes.
One is facility needs, and then
Yes.
one for preparing for the future, not for next year.
Correct.
It's like 5 years. And then I see this one as, okay, so next year, where are those students going? You know, based on the location. So I see it as two different needs too.
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
I think
it
what
is-
it looks like now initially, I guess you want to talk about is like a high, is we're taking the best of what Scott does and the best of what Jack has provided, and we're going to try to find a way to
Yeah.
pull those into more unified approach. So we can, we're not going to cut out a step for the sake of cutting it out, at least in the recommendation, but it's to get it into a better output that we believe fits the district better than it's not that Scott and Future Think haven't done a great job in Ralph, but we want to bring it, I guess, into a new brand perspective. How's that? You're welcome.
Okay. So what we did with this particular projection is we divided the district up into different planning units because we wanted to get down to a higher resolution of geography that wasn't so high as subdivisions, because once we get into small units of geography like subdivisions, we lose statistical integrity because the sample sizes are too small. And so what we did is I basically took the current boundaries and the proposed boundaries for next year, slammed them together, and that's kind of what we ended up with our planning units. And so the reason that I did that is because I'm just have this fear that somebody's going to ask me to revamp these projections based on any kind of grandfathering or transfers, and we'll be able to do it backwards if we do it this way from the beginning. And so that's why we did that. We also have the ability to analyze housing and enrollment figures by planning unit, and then we can take those planning units and roll them up to the school level. And so this is just an example of kind of the statistics that we looked at when we were analyzing these planning units. And so this particular area is right around. This is I'm going to call this kind of just classic old school Cheshire. So this is Broadmiller Road, Glen Parkway. This little pink area, that's the Methesgo Methodist School up there. This chart shows us our historical development trends. And so this just gives us how many housing units did we have by year going back to, I think, 2000. And so you can just see real quickly what that development trend is. And then this is the specific zip code births that feed this particular planning unit. And so we use these factors to kind of influence the projections that we're making for this planning unit. What's interesting about this one is that if we looked at a typical projection, which basically just takes historical trends and progresses them forward, this would be a planning unit that would still show significant growth, but this planning unit is done as far as growth. We do have some things up here, but we don't know exactly when it's going to happen yet. This is Stockdale, hasn't been approved. We're not sure how many units it's going to be, so it's not really in our 5-year planning horizon. And what I've done is I've broken up the planning units kind of by their state. And so the big green pie piece or donut piece here, that's existing single family units. We also have active single family, and so those are going to be subdivisions that have already been cut. We've got students coming out of them already, but they're not necessarily complete. And then we show subdivisions that are planned, approved. They've got units associated with them. They're just ready to move dirt. And so we've taken that into account when we come up with the projections. So what this shows us down here, this is the actual historical enrollment for this planning unit. And so you can see in 2005, 2006, we had 129 students. in that area. And then, can you read that number for me?
510.
510 this year. And so you can just see that growth over time. And this is also formatted to show differences in comparable differences in the enrollment numbers. And so the darker blue shaded areas are going to be the low numbers, and the pinks are going to be the higher numbers. And so you can start to see when we have big classes or bubbles moving through the system, that impact as it cascades through. And so for this particular planning unit, what we did is we kind of suppressed the growth in it because we don't anticipate more development in this planning unit. And so that's kind of that level of detail. We went through this exercise for each of the 47 planning units that we're going to look at. I'm not going to go through all 47 because we'll be here all night. I just wanted to give you guys just an example of a couple of them. So this is a planning unit that's right next door. And so this is that Glen Ross area that's developing. And so you can see by looking at this, we've got subdivisions that are already complete, and then we have 109 units that are already, they're ready to go, permit is issued, but they're not occupied yet. And then we have 150 units that are up here in Glen Ross North that are approved, ready to go, but they're not built yet. And what we do is we look at, all right, well, how many units did we have built in the last 5 years? And is that basically the same number of units that we're anticipating in this? And if that's what we observe, then we let that projection kind of go naturally, because that historical growth will be captured in those survival ratios and the students that have shown up historically. And so that's just kind of how we did this. We kind of had a gas and a brake by planning unit.
For like more mature planning units, how do you handle like turnover?
Yeah, like
When the
Olentangy
subdivision
Ridge.
turns over, right?
Yeah, Olentangy.
One
Did you see
generation of
what I do?
homeowners kind of goes out.
Oh, I didn't do it. So for Olentangy Ridge, it would not have any growth in it historically. So it would basically remain flat or decline just based on what it's done in the last 3 or 5 years. And so we're not going to apply like a district-wide growth yield to that area. We're just going to let it do what it does naturally.
But that is something, a dynamic we're going to have to change, we're going to have to analyze closely as because it's a new dynamic.
Yeah.
All of our growth used to just come from new homes, new people coming in. We need, because that's what's caused some of those enrollment spikes in an area like an Olentangy Meadows.
So could you capture like real estate transactions in the planning unit as a leading indicator to potential turnover? If you get a lot of activity, transaction activity.
Well, when we did the student potential study last year, I mean, our research showed that when a subdivision comes online, the first 15 years are going to be its highest yielding years. And then it will, because you have a lot of families moving in all at the same time with relatively young kids. And so you'll see those bottom-heavy elementary subdivisions, and then they grow up. Some people leave, some people stay. And when that turnover occurs, it never gets back to the rate that it was when it was brand new. And so that's something that we consider in that student potential modeling long term. I mean, that's that chart that had the big blue hump in it that showed the maximum enrollment and then it declining over time. This is that 10-year study that we're looking at now.
But it may not get back to the peak, but you could still go through that period of where it was doing this and now it starts to do this again, right?
Like
may not get all the way back up, but
That is something we're going to be talking about as we
Because
continue.
Worthington is experiencing that, where they actually had a real decline, where they closed the building and turned another middle school into something else, and now it's picking back up, and so now they're looking, oh my gosh, we got to relook at our facilities because it is recycling. But again, it's probably been over, that cycle has probably been
30
over
years.
15 to 20 years.
Worthington's another area that I know pretty well.
Yeah.
Your student yields that you typically see are like 0.9 or to 1 student per unit, K-12. Worthington is like 0.35. And that bump up that they saw might have gone to like 0.45 or 5 or 0.5. Like it's not a big, massive, oh my gosh, we need to change how we're thinking about everything. I mean, it's different in Worthington because they haven't built anything at any significant number in the last 20 years.
So their number can spike, but they still have capacity.
Correct. But I mean, it's not going to spike all at once in one area.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So this last planning unit I wanted to focus on, this is all multifamily, condos and apartments. This is all of the area that is between Lozelle and Gemini. And so you can see how many units we had over time. This is entirely multifamily. And so one of the challenges with this particular planning unit is we have this big, we've had a lot of growth in number of apartments that are going in. And we've got these relatively big numbers in kindergarten and first grade. And as those roll forward, those numbers get really big and scary really fast. One of the challenges that's inherent to this projection model is progression, and it's all based on historical trends. We don't have enough data yet to really illustrate that people move out of apartments when they get to 4th and 5th grade. And so that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on as we move forward. You'll look at this and you might think that some of the orange numbers look a little scary.
Yeah.
And that's because of this. And so this is one of those things that I believe that those students, when they get out of elementary, they may move elsewhere in the district, for a bigger home footprint. And so this is something that we just have to keep an eye on and make sure that this doesn't necessarily continue to pick up. But again, we don't have enough data to really show it in the model yet.
I was also wondering if the people living in those apartments are contract workers for Chase that would recycle out as well. So that's always been my question. Are they going to stay in the district, or when the job is completed, will they, go elsewhere? And so that was my concern as well in this area too.
That's something that we can look at. But
Yeah.
this is just something that I wanted to point out. This is another area that we kind of try to take those lower trends on, just because we don't, I just don't think that people that have middle school and high school kids are going to want to pay $1,500 to $2,000 a month for an apartment if they can help it. And so that's just something that we're waiting for that data to kind of come in. One other thing that I just to anecdotally point out, we're getting more apartments, but those student yields per apartment are holding pretty steady. I think they're between 0.15 and 0.2. They creeped up a little bit, but we're not seeing anything. It's not the students per unit that's pushing that enrollment, it's the number of units.
But again, I mean, if you look, we always get this question, tax base wise. And Jeff, is Jeff here? I thought I saw him. Jeff Gordon. I think that we're still coming out ahead tax base wise on the students, that because let's face it, we get this all the time. Well, the people in apartments aren't paying property taxes. Yes, they are. The owner of that building is still paying us property taxes. So, their property taxes are included in their rent that they're paying. But, Jeff has presented, I don't know how many times, the amount of the amount of tax money that apartments are bringing in this district isn't negatively impacting the finances of this district. And I just want to make sure that that's, by my figures, I think that is still the case.
Yeah, and just, driving through here, I see, is it Murata right there on 23?
Yeah.
And 801 Polaris.
Yeah.
Those are low yielding
Right.
projects.
Right.
Those are 1 and 2 bedrooms, and I think 801 has 208 units and I think 6 or 7 kids coming out of it.
Right.
And so those may look scary, like, oh my gosh, there's so many units, we're going to get so many kids, but they just don't draw, the volume of kids that you think that they might. Now, if it's a 3 or 4 bedroom apartment,
Right.
then that's when you're talking those higher yields that are closer to that 0.15 or 0.2.
Not a high yield compared to a single family
No,
home.
absolutely not. But it's just the sheer volume of units is what drives it. Okay, so here's our projected enrollment by boundary. And so kind of what I've done is I've just kind of color coded these. So the elementary school enrollment figures, they turn pink when they hit 700. The middle schools, I think, turn pink when they hit 1100, and the high schools turn pink when they hit 1800. And again, I just want to stress that this is based on attendance boundary of residence, not attendance. So it doesn't account for any programs that might be in the school. So if you look at this and you're like, well, we have a lot more than 501 kids at Alum Creek, it doesn't account for any pre-K or SLCs that are there. So this is purely based on residence. But I think it's just interesting to look back in time. If we just look at Cheshire, so the boundary as it's drawn for next year, there were 147 kids in 2005 in Cheshire. So Berkshire Middle School, 413. Looking at the high schools, for Berlin, 427. Now we've got 1,075. We have this projecting out to 1,850 within 10 years.
A question on your boundaries with Berlin High School, because it's showing for next, so would the next school year figure be the 2018 figure or the 2019 figure?
It's the 2018 figure,
Okay.
and it does not assume anybody staying. It assumes that, these numbers assume that Berlin opens as a 912.
That's what I was going to ask. So it doesn't assume that the seniors are staying at Olentangy, which they are.
So the first real year that you'd want to look at
Is
is going to be the 19 year.
Right, okay, that's what I was going to ask.
That shows Liberty at, what's that show Liberty at?
Liberty is at 1771, 1893,
1993, and Liberty's, we with seniors staying and grandfathering, it's still over 21.
But it does show that turnover decline at Liberty over time naturally, just on the current boundary.
Yeah, getting back to normal.
Again, the numbers at Orange gave me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, but we just have to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, it looks like you almost need to do some rebalancing on the west of the elementaries. Because you got a lot of capacity at Indian Springs and Liberty Tree. You get some challenges at Tyler Run.
But, like at Liberty Tree, maybe that's where you put preschool classes.
Right.
Yeah, you configure the SLCs.
Right.
Okay, any questions or?
Great information.
Okay.
Good, very good. Well done.
Do we have a number, an opening enrollment number for Olentangy Berlin?
Do we have an opening?
Roughly.
Isn't that about what Liberty opened at?
In
Oh,
Orange.
I'm sure, or in Orange.
All
yeah.
small.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We appreciate your information. Mrs. Hatfield, do we have any public participation regarding action items?
No, we do not.
Okay, with that, would you please present the treasurer action items?
Yes, please. I would like to present Treasurer Action Item A for the approval of the November and December financials, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Hatfield, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Yes. The motion is approved. Mr. Rafe, will you please present the superintendent action items?
Yes, ma'am. I'll present superintendent action items A through G for approval.
So moved.
A second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Hatfield, please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Bless you. Bless you.
What, before we adjourn, I'd like to give special thanks to the Boy Scout troop because you were very well behaved. It was a long meeting and probably more than you needed to know. So, job well done.
Hopefully you get
Yeah,
a
there's got to
badge.
be a
Yeah,
badge in
there's
for
gotta be a
that.
badge.
Yeah, is there a badge for
because No
tonight?
one stays.
Parliamentary procedure badge,
We
perhaps?
are working on a badge, citizenship in the community.
Oh, good, good.
Okay. Well, now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Anyone want to go?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion items regarding adjournment?
No.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mrs. Patrick.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming, and we will meet here again on February 8th,
There's
6
a lot of
p.m.
detail.
Good evening.
Yeah.